Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Eotech 558. And spoiler alert, it did not pass the drop test. But before we get into the video, if you want to help me out personally, you can, of course, like, share, and subscribe, as all that sort of stuff is free and does help me out quite a bit. Also, go ahead and comment something cracking down below. Now, with all that out of the way, there's also my website, which also theoretically has a few things in stock. Most everything sold out again, but I do have a few things coming back in stock soon, so you might want to check it up and sign up for back in stock notifications. Other than that, there's also Subscribestar, which is just a pro to a Patreon, and that's about it. Now, full disclosure on the Eotech 558. I paid my own money for this. I purchased this last Black Friday, so I've had it for, 6 months or so at this time, and I've used it on a lot of different guns. You guys have seen it on just about every gun that I own on the channel, probably 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 rounds, somewhere in that range, as I really haven't kept track of it, as I didn't intend to have any sort of issues with it when it came to round count or durability. Now, I paid $450 on sale. The MSRP on this optic is $792. You can usually find it for around $500 to $600, $650, depending on what sort of sale and deals are going on at any given time. So this is a very, very expensive optic. Now, we are going to be getting into the basics of the optic, as you should at least understand what it is before we go over how it failed. So if you don't know, Eotech has a few different lines of optics. This is the 558, so in that series they have the 512, which is basically a low profile AA battery tray with no night vision. Then they have the 518, which is basically the 512, but on a 1/3 inch riser with the QD lever. Then they have the 558, which is all of those things plus the night vision settings. They also have the 552, which is the lower version with night vision settings. So that's kind of the 500 series. Then they have the XPS, the 3 and the 2 series, which the EXPS is the tall version, and the 3 denotes the fact that they have night vision settings. So you have the EXPS2, the EXPS3, so on and so forth. So there are a lot of different Eotech models, but the main differences are going to be the height, night vision settings, and of course battery type, this one being the dual AA batteries. Now, most Eotechs have a battery life, a rated battery life of around 1,000 hours. This is one of the 2 or 3 Eotechs that has the 2,000 hours of battery life. They claim 2,500 at setting 12. You're really never going to be at setting 12 because this does have 20 brightness settings and of course 10 night vision settings on top of that. So for whatever sort of lighting condition that you're in, it has a setting for you, so you can fine tune it very, very nicely. So at setting 12 with lithium batteries, they do rate it at 2,500 hours, though realistically, if you're using it for only daytime shooting, you're probably going to be getting closer to 1,200 to 1,500 hours. Now, important to note that Eotechs do not have auto on, they do have auto off. If you push the up arrow, it will do 8 hours of auto on, and if you push the down arrow, it will do 4 hours of auto on. And if you move it up or down whatsoever, it will of course reset that time. Now, 1,500 hours sounds super, super low, especially when compared with auto on-off technologies with LED emitters, which are essentially infinite or as long as their batteries will hold charge. However, I've had this for 6 months. I've used it for quite a bit, quite a few range trips, probably, 30 or 40 or so. And I have only changed the batteries once. Now, full disclosure on that, I use the original batteries, so I don't know what sort of shape the original batteries were, and they just died recently, like last week they finally died. So basically what you're going to be getting with the Eotech is you're going to be getting about 200 uses out of it, because of course if you just use the 8-hour auto off, you turn it on for your range day, you forget about it, it automatically turns off after 8 hours, you're going to get about 200 uses. So for me, that time was that many range trips, that many dry fire sessions on the original batteries, again, that I don't know how good they were in. So realistically, your battery life is going to be about 6 months to a year, depending on how much you actually shoot it. Fortunately, AA batteries are extremely cheap and easy to source, which is another advantage for me to the 558, because in terms of feature set, I like the 558 the best because it does have double the battery life of your EXPS series, and it's going to have the AA batteries, which for me, I have a lot more AA batteries than I do 123As. Honestly, I don't use 123As for just about anything outside of a few niche applications, even though, again, some people have the opposite effect and they have a ton of 123s lying around and not as many AAs. Now, getting into construction of the optic itself, The body itself, the main body, is going to be a hybrid of polymer and aluminum. So your battery tray and some of your other body components are actually polymer, and then the base of the optic itself is aluminum. The large shroud, that is a very thick shroud that goes over the whole optic, is also a very thick aluminum, and it absorbed no damage whatsoever during the drop test, and it should, in theory, transfer all of that energy from impacts and what have you to the base of the optic and not the glass. However, as you can tell, that did not exactly happen in our drop test. As far as control goes, on the left side, you have your plus and your minus button, which do plus and minus things. You have your night vision settings. You hold it down and you will go into night vision mode. And of course, you have your QD lever, which is very nice. It holds to the rail very well. On the bottom, we do have a singular squared off cross bolt that acts as a recoil lug, which allows the mount to have a little bit more contact surface with your upper receiver, theoretically holding a better zero and returning to zero better if you take it on and off, which of course you have a QD lever. So I've put this on a ton of different guns myself, and the zero has actually held up fairly well. If I put it from one gun, then back to the other gun, and I just go shooting. If I'm shooting inside 100 to 200 yards, I really don't even have to adjust my zero, which is kind of nice. Now, even though this is a hybrid polymer and aluminum optic, it still clocks in at a whopping 13.8 ounces, which is either the heaviest or the second heaviest red dot / holographic style optic on the market. So as far as size and weight goes, this is basically the biggest and heaviest one out there. Now, if you're putting this on a smaller gun, you could very quickly be running out of rail space. If you're already cramped for rail space, you throw this guy on and then a full-size magnifier behind, you're not going to have that much fun if you're already cramped for space and then you try and throw this guy on top. Similarly, if you're already running a heavy gun and a heavy setup, heavy platform, what have you, again, throwing this guy on there could push you over the edge where you start to have deteriorating performance, because this is nearly a pound on top of your rifle, PDW, what have you. So with all that being said, it's big, it's heavy, it's expensive, it has a short battery life compared to other LED-based emitters on the market. Why would anyone want to buy an Eotech, or specifically the 558? Now, all Eotechs basically have three things going for them most of the time. Usually speaking, the glass quality is the best, and the glass quality on the 558, not currently, but in general, is phenomenal. There's absolutely no distortion, no warping whatsoever. It is a perfectly flat image with no magnification. Again, literally zero distortion anywhere within the glass. You have a very perfect, flat, true representation of 1X. On top of that, the reticles are kind of a love it or hate it thing. Some people, they look really, really fuzzy because they're staring at the reticles themselves. But if you're target focused, which you should be target focused when you're shooting, they appear very fine and very crisp. On top of that, again, the glass quality has almost no tint to it whatsoever, and the light transmission is nearly perfect. So for like night vision applications, they are widely regarded as either the best or second best, depending on the specific application, though that is, again, not something that I am currently testing. Now, the next thing about them is, of course, their legendary durability. That has not been my experience with this optic specifically, but up until this point, my experience with the optic was great, and everything that I'd heard from most people out there, aside from a few like delaminating issues and whatnot, has been basically perfect. Now that we've addressed all of that, we might as well talk about the elephant in the room. Obviously, as you can see, the glass did not hold up during the drop test. Basically, every optic that I test, with a few exceptions, gets a double drop test, especially something that's like designed to be a duty, hard use style of optic, should get a double drop test. Now, you would think, by virtue of the design, this has a very thick aluminum hull that protects all of the important components, and then it is actually bolted to the actual aluminum frame, the bottom portion of the optic, so it should take all that energy and then transfer it into the bottom of the optic, the mount, rather than the glass. However, we were doing our double drop test. Now, we did switch up the drop test a little bit. I wanted to make it more consistent, which is something that actually some of you guys have suggested to me. So I was actually just going to be using basically the hardest thing that I had on hand, which is an AR500 steel plate, one of my personal plates that I use all the time, which is just going to be a more consistent medium for the drops. I'm not going to be getting any shorter or taller, hopefully anytime soon. And of course, the steel plate usually isn't going to soften up over time. So we went ahead and did a double drop test. In this case, it was actually 3 drops because one of them actually landed on the lower of the gun, which doesn't count because it didn't touch the optic. So on the second drop, on the side of the glass, the entire front pane cracked and broke, and it is missing a large chunk here on the right hand side. Now, on top of that, the reticle still does work, and you still can see it. And the magic of Eotech reticles is that even though the front glass is broken and missing, it is still there. You can actually still see the reticle, even where there is no glass, which is a pretty cool feature. Now, we do a control group before we do the double drop test, and the group did shift about a foot to the right at 50 yards, so that's about 25 MOA. So that is a basically useless zero at that point. If you're at point blank range, of course, it's still going to hit the target, but anything beyond that, you know, even 50 yards, if you're not perfectly centered, you're going to miss somebody off their right shoulder because it did shift to the right about 25 MOA. Now, the mount was torqued down to the base. We were using the Mark 111 Mod 1, which is actually right here behind me. Great gun, very, very big fan of the Mark 111 Mod 1 from PWS. Great gun, great piston system in general. But the mount was torqued down to spec. Basically, you have a tightening nut on the right-hand side and you torque that down. I had it 1 or 2 clicks back from the point where I could no longer physically get it off without like jamming something in there to get the QD lever off. So it was definitely secured to the rail. Yet we still experienced shift in zero. It was basically, again, an unusable zero outside of like 25 yards or so, and the front pane of the glass did completely shatter. Now, glass is a finicky material. In certain circumstances, it is incredibly strong, but if you change those circumstances up, it becomes very, very fragile. Now, this is one of the first issues that I've ever seen with an Eotech, especially like this. I've never heard of it ever happening. The aluminum hole is not even dented or really marked up. It is marked up a little bit from the white paint from the target, but in general, it's not deformed. It didn't dent or move whatsoever. So it was just the impact, the sudden stop on the optic body itself that caused the pane of glass to crack. Not sure if that was just a momentum shift or what exactly was going on there, because again, there is nothing touching the glass whatsoever, so it should take this impact and then put that into the base of the optic. And again, somewhere in that transition, the front pane of the optic decided to completely blow out. Now, I have contacted Eotech's customer service, not sure if they're actually going to warranty this for me, which is very unfortunate considering that this is a very, very expensive optic and something that I had zero intention of it failing whatsoever. And this is a pretty bad fail. For instance, the SIG Romeo 5, which is a $100 optic right behind me, that one there has been dropped about 30 times. That was the same optic that I did during the different mount testing, where I did a double drop test on like 6 or 7 different mounts, plus its own double drop test, plus 5 or 10,000 rounds at this point. And the only thing that I've had to do to that optic is switch out a battery. Also, right next to it, you have the SIG Romeo 8T, which is a similarly designed optic with a titanium shroud. That one there, I threw off of a hillside, 30, 40 feet, and that one there has been dropped probably 10 times if you watch the AT3 receiver set video that I did a couple weeks ago. Horrible things were done to that optic without issue. So the glass breaking on the Eotech, for me, is very disconcerting, though I do acknowledge that this could totally be a fluke. I don't think you should sell your Eotechs. I don't think you should stop buying your Eotechs. If this were a widespread issue, I would hope more people would have brought this to light. And I've seen drop tests on Eotechs very similar to the one that I did, and they passed just fine. This could honestly just be a 1 in 10,000 fluke. So that, however, is what happened to the optic. So that is going to be the main part of the review. That doesn't mean personally that I'm really even discouraged from buying Eotechs in the future. If I have a specific application for them, that application would most likely be a dedicated night vision gun, because when it's in its night vision mode, the battery life, because it's using such a low power draw, is basically infinite. Again, whatever the batteries can actually hold charge. However, most of the time, I would probably be better suited with a more modern style of optic that had better battery life and similar reticle fidelity, good glass quality, auto on, auto off, so I don't have to push a button. If I forget to push a button, the optic isn't dead when I bring it up, so on and so forth. So while I do still like the Eotech 558, the glass is great, the reticle is nearly perfect. I was able to take it out to 500 yards on that GPX upper, that is the tan one behind me, that one there. I took it out to 500 yards with just a magnifier. And again, it performed very well. I didn't have any issues with it right up until the glass cracked and the zero shifted about 25 MOA.
Low right. Middle, middle. Middle high.
Gonna go to 4.
Yeah.
It's right on where it should be, so I'm happy with that.
Alright, I'm good. Middle, middle. Middle high.
Again, that is a little disconcerting, though. If I had to bet money on it, I would bet that this is a fluke, though. If I get another one, or if I get the, you know, warranted version of this back and I test it again and it breaks again, at that point I would actually kind of be done with this specific model of Eotech, and hopefully it's not the same issue with the different designs or different body styles of Eotech. Now, with all that being said, guys, let me know what you guys think of the Eotech 558. Let me know if you guys have ever seen this sort of crack before on an Eotech. Again, I haven't up until this point seen or heard of something like this happening to an Eotech before. And again, I'm hoping that it was just a fluke, and also crossing my fingers that Eotech actually warranties it for me. Now, with all that out of the way, guys, I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think of this down below, or if there's any sort of other optics like it that I should test in the future. With all that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace off.
Left, middle. Miss, low. Hit, middle, middle. Hit, low, right. Barely a miss, left edge of plate. Hit, middle, middle.
Okay. I'm gonna go back to 400 here.
Yeah.
Nice. No, I mean, that's very impressive for just Kentucky windaging that. All right, good.
I'm on. Hit, middle, middle, or middle slightly high. Miss, barely left edge plate. Hit, low, middle. Hit, middle, middle.
Sick. No, yeah, so it was left side for the 500 target, but then you had to hold like center on the 400 target.
There's probably some wind way out there. I'm not.
Well, or just, you know, there's a little bit more the further out you go, because the slower and slower the rounds get, the worse and worse they perform. All right.
I'm not seeing any wind though in the grass or trees.
No,
it's pretty dead
so
out there.
dead out here right now. It is awesome. If every day I came out here shooting was like this.
No, it looks dead. There's no sway in the trees.
Yeah, you know, like overcast.
There's
the sun.
the tiniest bit right here in front of us. You can see stuff just slightly moving.
It's so low for what's going on right now, though.
That's maybe a 1 mile.